very much, Senator Hirono. Senator Grassley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I use Twitter regularly. Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube are also popular social media platforms where users disseminate their views and opinions for billions of users around the world. Just here in the United States, in 2019, an estimated 72% of Americans use at least one social media site. People can make their voices heard, share their opinions, and interact. Increasingly, however, these big tech companies are deciding what we can and cannot say and infringing on America's freedom of speech. I constantly hear from Iowans about their concerns with control that big tech has over the discourse in this country, as well as the biases that these platforms have against conservative voices in middle America. I've heard numerous stories about posts being deleted, businesses removed, and creditors silenced. Many times this happens without warning and very little, if any, due process. These platforms have monopoly powers with very few competitors and aren't constrained by market forces, and consumers have no alternative. Big tech is also immune from liability under Section 230. This immunity, combined with monopoly, allows them to censor, block, and ban whatever they want. We must look at the power and control that a handful of companies have over speech and their silencing voices with which they disagree. So my questions to Mr. Beckert, Culbertson, and Ms. Vish, when you decide to remove current content from platforms, do you believe that you do that consistent with First Amendment free speech principles, such as viewpoint neutrality? And if you believe that you're doing that, then why is it that conservative voices are consistently the ones who are being censored?
Senator, thank you for the question. We are a platform for ideas across the political spectrum. I do believe that we enforce our policies without regard to political affiliation. And I do hear questions from both sides of the aisle, if you will, about whether or not we are fair in our content policy enforcement. But I can tell you that we enforce our policies without regard to political ideology.
Senator, I also appreciate the question here. We want YouTube to be a place where diversity of viewpoints are heard. We do have public-facing community guidelines that govern what is allowed on our platform and what is not. We do enforce these consistently without regard for political viewpoint. You did mention due process, so I wanted to call out that when content is removed from a creator does receive an email explaining that and is given an opportunity to directly appeal. We make public the data around our appeals. So in the last quarter of 2020, we did have 223,000 appeals and 83,000 reinstatements, showing we don't always get this right, but we certainly want to apply our policies evenly.
And as for Twitter, and Senator, thank you for the question, and we love to see your tweets on Twitter. You're one of my favorite follows. And as you probably appreciate, Twitter wouldn't be Twitter if everyone had the same viewpoints, and we welcome diverse perspectives. It's what makes our service Twitter. We have rules in place. We enforce them impartially. And I know people have concerns, and they believe that companies like ours should be more transparent. That's why we've put forth 3 core solutions, which we think would go a long way to addressing some of these concerns. The first is increased transparency. The second is more user control and choice over algorithms. And the third is enhanced due process. So if we do make a mistake, that users have the ability to appeal and have their decision reviewed against our terms one more time.
Yeah. There are countless examples of material being removed by a platform stating that it is misinformation, but it is actually just viewpoints that liberals might disagree with. What are your platforms doing to ensure that they're not using pretextual reasons to censor differing opinions? And then that's my last question.
I'm happy to take this one. And Twitter's taken a very narrowly scoped focus on misinformation at this time. We have 3 categories that govern our policies. The first is synthetic and manipulated media. The second is civic integrity. And the third is COVID-19 misinformation. We are piloting a program called Birdwatch that would crowdsource annotations to potential misinformation. So this is something to address all forms of misinformation, and it would also bring more voices in to help us with that work.
Senator, we do have robust community guidelines on YouTube. Those exist to keep people safe. To your point, it's important to note that those community guidelines are public facing and can be reviewed by any of our users.
I guess, Mr. Chairman, the third person didn't want to comment, so I'll give up my time. Go ahead.
Thank you, Senator Grassley. I appreciate that. Senator Klobuchar.
Hard act to